My name is Lucas McLean. This is Chapter 7, The Sorting Hat, and I'm doing my book project on the audio with Shane. The door swung open at once. A tall, black-haired witch in emerald green robes stood there. She had a very stern face, and Harry's first thought was that this was not someone across first years. Professor McGonagall said, "Hagrid, thank you, Hagrid. I will take them from here." She pulled the door wide. The entrance hall was so big you could have fit the whole Dursley's house in it. The stone walls were lifting with flaming torches like ones at Gringotts. The ceiling was so high to make out the magnificent marble staircase facing them led to the upper floors. They followed Professor McGonagall across the flagstone floor. Harry could hear the drone of hundreds of voices from a doorway to the right. Rest of our school must already be here, but Professor McGonagall showed the first years into a small empty chamber of the hall. The crowded in, standing rather closely together than they would usually have done, peering about nervously. "Welcome to Hogwarts," said Professor McGonagall. "Start of term banquet will begin shortly, but before you take your seats in the Great Hall, you will be sorted into your houses. The sorting hat is a very important ceremony, because while you are here, your house will be something like your family within Hogwarts. You will have class with the rest of your house, you sleep in your house dormitory, and you spend free time in your house with the house common room. The four houses are called Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Each house has its own noble history, and each has produced outstanding witches and wizards. While you are at Hogwarts, your triumphs will earn you house points, while any rule breaking will lose house points. At the end of the year, the house with the most points is awarded to the House Cup. With great honor, I hope each of you will be a credit to whichever house becomes yours. The sorting ceremony will take place in a few minutes in front of the rest of the school. I suggest you all smarten yourselves up as much as you can while you are waiting." Her eyes lingered for a moment on Neville's cloak, which was fastened under his left ear on Ron's smudged nose. Harry nervously tried to flatten his hair. "I shall return when we are ready for you," said Professor McGonagall. "Please wait quietly." She left the chamber. Harry swallowed. "How exactly they sort us into houses?" asked Ron. "Some sort of test, I think." Fred said it hurts a lot, but I think he was joking. Harry's heart gave a horrible jolt. A test? In front of the whole school? But he didn't know any magic gas. What on earth could he have to do? He hadn't expected something like the moment they arrived. They looked around anxiously and saw that everyone else looked terrified. Too, no one was talking much except Hermione Granger, which was whispering very fast about all the spells she'd learned and wondering which one she'd need. Harry tried hard not to listen to her. He'd never been more nervous, not even when he'd taken school report home to the Dursleys, saying he'd somehow turned his teacher's wig blue. He kept his eyes fixed on the door. Any second now, Professor McGonagall would come back and lead him to his dorm. Then something happened that made him jump about a foot in the air. Several people behind him screamed, "What the?" he gasped. So did the people around him. About 20 ghosts had just streamed through the back wall, pearly white and slightly transparent. They glided across the room, talking to another, and hardly glancing at the first years. They seemed to be arguing. What it looked like a fat little monk was saying, "Forgive and forget, I say. We ought to give him a second chance. My dear Friar, haven't we given Peeves all the chance he deserves? He gives us all a bad name, and you know he's really not even a ghost. I say, what are you all doing here?" A ghost wearing a ruff and tights and had suddenly noticed the first years. "Nobody," I answered. "New students," said the fat friar. smiling about them. About to be sorted, I suppose. A few people nodded mutterly. I hope to see you in Hufflepuff, said the Friar. My old house, you know. Move along, said a sharp voice. The starting ceremony is about to start. Professor McGonagall had returned to one by one. The ghosts floated away. The opposite wall now formed a line. Professor McGonagall told the first years, and follow me. Feeling oddly as to his legs, he had turned the lead. Harry had got into line with the boy with the sandy hair, with Ron behind him, and they walked out of the chamber, back across the hall, and through a pair of double doors into the great hall. Harry had never even imagined such a strange and splendid space. It was lit by thousands of candles that were floating in midair over 4 long tables where the rest of the students were sitting. These tables were laid with glittering golden plates and goblets. At the top of the hall was another long table where the teachers were sitting. Professor McGonagall led them years up here, and so that they came to a halt in a line facing the other students with a teacher behind them. The hundreds of faces staring at them looked like pale lanterns in the flickering candlelight. Dotted here and there among their stones, the ghosts shone a misty silver, mainly to avoid into staring eyes. Harry looked upward, and he saw a velvety black ceiling tile dotted with stars. He heard Hermione whisper, "It's bewitched to look like the sky outside. I read about it in Hogwarts history." It was hard to believe there was a ceiling there at all. That great hall hadn't simply opened onto the heavens. Harry quickly looked down at Professor McGonagall, silently placed a 4-legged stool out in front of first years. On top of the stool, she pointed out a wizard's hat. His hat was patched and frayed and extremely dirty. Aunt Petunia would have let it in the house. Maybe she had them try to get a rabbit out of them, Harry thought woodily. That seemed the sort of thing. Noticing everyone in the halls was now staring at the hat, it stared at it too. For a few seconds there was complete silence, then the hat twitched. A rip near the brim opened like a wide mouth, and the hat began to sing. "Oh, may you not think I'm pretty, but don't judge you on what you see. I'll eat myself if you can find a smarter hat than me. You can keep your bowlers black, on the top hat sleek and tall, but I'm the Hogwarts sorting hat. I can cap them all. There's nothing hidden in your head the sorting hat can't see. So try me on, and I will tell you whether you might ought to be. You might belong in Gryffindor, where dual Ravenheart, the daring nerve that cheerfully set Gryffindors apart. You might belong to Hufflepuff, where they're disloyal, those patient Hufflepuffs are true, unafraid of toil. Yet wise old Ravenclaw, if you are ready mind, those of wit and learning will always find their kind. Or perhaps Slytherin, you make your real friends. Those cunning folk use any means to achieve their ends. So put me on, don't be afraid, and don't get in a flap. In your safe hands, for I'm a thinking cap." The whole hall burst into applause as the hat finished its song. It bowed to each of 4 tables, then it became quiet and still again. "So we've got to try on the hat," Ron whispered to Harry. "I'd kill Fred if he was going to be on wrestling troll." Harry smiled weakly. Yes, trying on the hat was a lot better than having to do a spell. But he did wish they could have tried it on without everyone watching. The hat seemed to be rather asking questions. A lot. Harry didn't feel brave, quick-witted, or any of that at the moment. If the hat had mentioned for a house of people who felt a bit queasy, that would have been one for him. Professor McGonagall now stepped forward, holding a long roll of parchment. "When I call your name, you will put on the hat and sit down in the stool about Hannah." A pink-faced girl with blonde pigtails stumbled out of line, put on the hat, and which fell right down over her eyes, and sat down. A moment's pause. "Hufflepuff!" shouted the hat. The table on the right cheered and clapped as Hannah went to sit down at the Hufflepuff table. Harry saw the ghost of the fat fairy waving merrily at her. "Bones, Susan." "Hufflepuff!" shouted the hat again, and Susan scuttled off, sit next to Hannah. "Boot, Terry." "Ravenclaw." This table, second from the left, clapped at this time. The Ravenclaw stood up to shake their hands with Terry as he joined. Brocklehurst Mandy went to the Ravenclaw too. Brown Lavender became the first new Gryffindor. At the table far left exploded with cheers. Harry could see Ron's twin brother Cat calling Bloodstone Millicent, then became a Slytherin. Perhaps it was Harry's imagination that he heard a lot about Slytherin, but he thought they looked unpleasant a lot. He was starting to feel definitely sick now. He remembered being picked for teams during gym at his old school. He had always been last to be chosen, but not because he was no good, because no one wanted Dudley to think they liked him. Finch Fletchley, Justin, Hufflepuff. Sometimes Harry noticed the hat shouted on the house at once, but others took a little while to decide. Finnegan Seamus, the sandy-haired boy next to Harry in the line, sat on the stool for almost a whole minute before the hat declared him a Gryffindor. Granger Hermione. Hermione almost ran out, hat eagerly heard. "Gryffindor!" shouted the hat. Ron groaned. Terribly thought struck Harry. Thoughts always do when you're very nervous. What if he wasn't chosen at all? What if he just sat there with the hat over his eyes for ages until Professor McGonagall jerked it off his head and said there had obviously been a mistake, and he'd get back on the train. When Neville Longbottom, the boy who had kept losing his toe, was calling, fell over to his wedge at the stool. That took a long time to decide Neville, but it was finally shouted, "Gryffindor!" Neville ran off, still wearing the hat, and had to jog back a mid-gale till laughter gave it to McGonagall Morag. Malfoy swaggered before him, and his name was called, and got his wish at once. He barely touched his head when he screamed, "Slytherin!" Malfoy went to join his friends, Crabbe and Goyle looking at him. There weren't many people left. Moon, Not, Parkinson. They're a pair of twin girls. Patel and Patil, then Park Sally Ann, and then at last, Potter Harry. As Harry stepped forward, whispers suddenly broke out like little hissing fires all over the hall. "Potter, did he say? The Harry Potter?" The last thing Harry saw before the hat dropped over his eyes was full of people craning to get a good look at him. Next second, he was looking at the black inside the hat. He wanted, said a small voice in his ear. "Difficult, very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not so bad mind either. There's a talent. Ooh, my goodness, yes. And nice things, the thirst to prove of yourself. Now that's interesting. So where shall I put you?" Harry gripped the edges of the stool and thought, "Not Slytherin, not Slytherin." "Not Slytherin, eh?" said the small voice. "Are you sure? You'd be great there." "You know it's all in your head," said Slytherin. "We'll help you on the way to greatness. And doubt, no, you're sure. You better be Gryffindor." Harry heard the house that last word on whole horror, took and hat and shakily to the Gryffindor table. He was so relieved he had been chosen not to be put in Slytherin. He hardly noticed that he was getting loudest cheer yet. Percy Perfect got up and shook his hand vigorously, while Weasley twins yelled, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" Harry sat down opposite the ghost rough she'd seen earlier. The ghost patted his arm, giving Harry the sudden, horrible feeling he'd just plunged into a bucket of ice-cold water. He could see the high table properly now. At the end nearest him sat Hagrid, who had caught his eyes, gave him the right thumbs up. Harry grinned back At the center of the high table in the large gold chair sat Albus Dumbledore. Harry recognized him at once from the card he got in out of a chocolate frog in the train. Dumbledore's silver hair was not the only thing in the whole hall that shone as brightly as ghosts. Harry Potter spotted Professor Quirrell, too. To the nervous young man from the Leaky Cauldron, he was looking very peculiar, large purple turban. And now there were only 4 people left to be sorted. Thomas Dean, a black boy that was taller than Ron, joined Harry at the Gryffindor table. Turpin Lisa became a Ravenclaw, and then it was Ron's turn. He was a pale green by now. Harry crossed his fingers out under the table and given a second letter that shouted, "Gryffindor!" Harry clapped loudly with the rest as Ron collapsed into the chair next to him. "Well done, Ron, excellent," said Percy composedly across Harry. As Zambini Blaze was made a Slytherin, Professor McGonagall rolled up her scroll, took out Sorting Hat away. Harry looked down and empty at the gold plate. He had only just realized how hungry he was. Pumpkin pasty seemed ages ago. Albus Dumbledore had gotten to his feet, and he was beaming at the students, his arms open wide, as if nothing had pleased him more than to see them all here. "Welcome," he said. "Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words. And here they are. Nitwit, Blubber, Oddment, Tweak, thank you." He sat back down. Everybody clapped and cheered. Harry didn't know whether to laugh or not. "Is he a bit mad?" he asked Percy uncertainly. "Mad?" said Percy. "He's a genius, the best wizard in the world." "But is he a bit mad?" "Yes. Potatoes, Harry?" Harry's mouth fell open. The dishes in front of him were now piled with food. He had never seen so many things he liked to eat. One table, roast beef, roast chicken, pork chops, lamb chops, sausages, bacon, steak, boiled potatoes, roast potatoes, fries, Yorkshire puddings, peas, carrots, gravy, ketchup, and more. And for some strange reason, peppermint humbugs. The Dursleys had never actually starved Harry, but he'd never been allowed to eat as much as he liked. Dudley always taken anything Harry really wanted, even if it made him very sick. Harry piled his plate with every bit of something except for the peppermints and began to eat. It was all delicious. "That does look good," said the ghost rough, sadly watching Harry cut up his steak. "Can't you?" "I haven't eaten for nearly 500 years, said the ghost. "I don't need to, of course, but one does miss it." "Introduce myself, Sir Nicholas D. Mumfus Partington, at your service, resident ghost, Gryffindor Tower." "I know who you are," said Ron suddenly. "My brothers told me about you. You're Nearly Headless Nick." "I would prefer you to call me Sir Nicholas D. Mumfus." The ghost began stiffly, but sandy-haired Seamus Finnegan interrupted. "Nearly headless? How could you become nearly headless?" Sir Nicholas looked extremely miffed, as their little chat wasn't going the way he wanted it. "Like this," he said irritably. He seized his left ear, pulled it, his whole head swung off his neck, and fell onto his shoulder, as if it was on a hinge. Somehow he had obviously tried to behead him, but not done it properly. He looked pleased at the stunned looks on their faces. Nearly Headless Nick flipped his head back onto his neck and coughed and said, "So, new Gryffindors. I hope you're going to help us win the house championship this year. Gryffindors have never gone so long without winning. Slytherins have gotten the cup 6 years in a row, guys. The Bloody Baron's becoming almost unbearable. He's a Slytherin ghost." Harry looked over the Slytherin table and saw a horrible ghost sitting there with blank, staring eyes, a gaunt face, robes stained with silver blood. He was right next to Malfoy. Harry was pleased to see. He didn't look too pleased with the seating arrangements. How did he get covered in blood? Asked Seamus with the great in toast. I never asked, said Nearly Headless Nick didactically. When everyone had eaten as much as they could, the remains of the food faded from their plates, leaving them sparkling clean. For a moment later, the desserts appeared. Blocks of ice cream in every flavor you could think of. Apple pies, treacle tarts, chocolate eclairs, and jam donuts, trifle strawberries, and jello rice pudding. As Harry helped himself to a treacle tart, the talk turned their families. I'm half and half, said Seamus. My dad's a muggle. Mom didn't tell him she was a witch till after we were married. Bit of a nasty shock for him. The others laughed. What's about you, Neville? Said Ron. Well, my gran brought me up, and she's a witch, said Neville. But my family, I thought I was a muggle for ages. My great uncle Algy kept trying to catch me off guard and force some magic out of me. He pushed me on to the end of the Blackpool Pier once. I nearly drowned, but nothing happened until I was 8. Great Uncle Algy came from round for dinner. He was hanging me out of an upstairs window by the ankles when my great aunt Enid feared him a meringue. He accidentally let go, but I bounced all the way down into the garden onto the road. They were all really pleased. Gran she was crying, and she was so happy. And you should have seen their faces when I got in here. They thought I might not be magic enough to become. You see, a great Uncle Algy was not so pleased. He bought me my own toad. On Harry's other side, Percy Weasley, the Hermione, were talking about lessons. I do hope they start right away. There's so much to learn. I'm particularly interested in transfiguration. You know, turning something into something else, of course. It's supposed to be very difficult. You'll be starting small with just matches and needles and that sort of thing. Harry, who was starting to feel warm and sleepy, had looked up at the high table again. Hagrid was drinking deeply from his goblet. Professor McGonagall was talking about Professor Dumbledore. Professor Quirrell, in his absurd turban, was talking to the teacher with greasy black hair, hooked nose, and a sallow skin. It happened very suddenly. The hook-nosed teacher looked past Quirrell's turban straight into Harry's eyes, and sharp, hot pain shot across Harry's forehead. Ouch! Harry clapped and his hand into his head. What is it? Asked Percy. Nothing. The pain had gone as quickly as it had come. Harder to shake off was a feeling Harry had forgotten from the teacher's look, a feeling that he didn't like Harry at all. Who's that teacher talking to Professor Quirrell? Yes, Percy. Oh, you know Quirrell already, do you? No wonder he's looking so nervous. That's Professor Snape. He teaches potions, but he doesn't want to. Everyone knows he's after Quirrell's job. Knows an awful lot about dark arts. Snape. Harry watched Snape for a while, but Snape didn't look at him again. At last the desserts too disappeared, and Professor Dumbledore got to his feet again. The hall fell silent. Ahem. Just a few more words, now that we all are fed, wondered. I have a few to start term notices to give you. First years should not know that the forest on grounds is forbidden to all pupils. And for our fewer older students would do well to remember that as well. Dumbledore's twinkling eyes flashed in the direction of Weasley twins. I have also been asked by Mr. Filch, the caretaker, to remind you that no magic should be used between classes or in the corridors. Quidditch trials will be held in the second week of our term. Anyone interested for playing for the house team should contact Madam Hooch. And finally, I must tell you that this year the third floor corridor on the right-hand side is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. Harry laughed, but he was one of the few who did. "Is he not serious?" he muttered to Percy. "Must be," said Percy, frowning at Dumbledore. "It's odd, because he usually gives us a reason why we're not allowed to go somewhere." "The forest is full of dangerous beasts. Everyone knows that. I do think he might have told us perfects at least. And now, before we go to bed, let us sing our school song," cried Dumbledore. Harry noticed that the older teacher's smiles had become rather fixed. Dumbledore gave the wand a little flick if he was trying to fly off the end. A long golden ribbon flew out of it, which rose high above and twisted itself snake-like into words. "Everyone pick their favorite tune," said Dumbledore, "and off we go." And the school bellowed, "Hogwarts, Hogwarts, Hoggy-Warty Hogwarts, teach us something, please. Whether we old or bald, or young with scabby knees, our heads could be filling with some interesting stuff. For now there's bare and full of air, dead flies and bits of fluff. So teach us worth knowing, bring back what we forgot, and just do your best, we'll do the rest and learn until our brains all rot." Everybody finished the song at different times. At least only the Weasley twins were left singing along to a very slow funeral march. Dumbledore conducted the last few lines with his wand. When they finished, which he was one of those who clapped the loudest. "Music," he said, wiping his eyes. "Magic beyond all we do here. And now, bedtime. Off your trot." The Gryffindor first years followed Percy through the chatting crowds of the Great Hall and the marble staircase. Harry's legs like lead again, but only because he was so tired, full of food. He was too sleepy to be surprised that the people in the portraits along the corridors whispered and pointed as they passed, or that twice Percy led them through the corridors hidden behind sliding panels and hanging tapestries. They climbed more into staircases, yawning and dragging their feet, and Harry was so wondered how much farther they had to go when they came to a sudden halt. A bundle of walking sticks was floating in midair ahead of him. As Percy took a step toward them and then started throwing themselves at him. "Peeves," Percy whispered to the first years. "A poltergeist." He raised his voice. "Peeves, show yourself." A loud, rude sound like the air let out a blue and answered, "Do you want me to go to the Bloody Baron?" There was a pop. A little man with wicked dark eyes. His mouth appeared floating cross-legged in the air, clutching the walking sticks. "Ooh," he said with an evil crackle. "Ickle firsties. What fun." He swooped suddenly at them. They all ducked. "Go away, Peeves, or the Baron will hear about this." "I mean it," barked Peeves. Peeves stuck out his tongue, vanished, dropping the walking sticks on Evil's head. They heard him zooming away, rattling coats of armor as he passed. "You want to watch out for Peeves," said Percy as they set off again. "The Bloody Baron's the only one who can control him. Won't even listen to us perfects. Here we are." At the end of the corridor hung a portrait with a very fat woman in the pink silk dress. Said, "Password," she said. "Caput Draconis," said Percy, and the portrait swung forward to reveal a round hole in the wall. They all scrambled through it. Neville needed a long leg up and found themselves in the Gryffindor common room, a cozy round room full of squishy armchairs. Percy directed the girls through an open door to their dormitory and the boys through another. At the top of the spiral staircase, they were obviously in one of the towers. They found their beds at last. 5 floor posters hung up with deep red velvet curtains. Their trunks had already been brought up, too tired to talk as much as they pulled their pajamas and fell into bed. "Great food, isn't it?" Ron muttered to Harry. through the hangings. Get off, Scabbers, he's chewing my sheets. Harry was going to ask Ron if he had any of the treacle tarts, but he fell asleep almost at once. Perhaps Harry had eaten a bit too much, because he was a very strange dream. He was wearing Professor Quirrell's turban, which kept talking to him, telling him he must transfer to Slytherin at once because it was his destiny. Harry told the turban he didn't want to be in Slytherin. It got heavier and heavier. He tried to pull it off, but tightened painfully, and there was Malfoy laughing at him as he struggled with it. Then Malfoy turned into the hook-nosed teacher, Snape, whose laugh became high and cold. There was a burst of green light, and Harry awoke, sweating and shaking. He rolled over and fell asleep again. And when he woke up the next day, he didn't remember the dream at all. That is the end of Chapter 7 for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And I will see you next time for Chapter 8.